Welcome, everyone. Let me quickly just take you through a couple of introductory slides just to set the scene. So last evening, National Treasury published their draft Preferential Procurement Regulations for 2022, and they published that for comment. Now, very important points that they've done here. They've raised that this is in accordance with Section 5.2 of the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act. It is stating very clearly that these regulations are intended to be made by the Minister of Finance in terms of Section 5.1, read in terms of Section 2.1b and c, and the definition of prescribed in Section 1 of the Act. So we will come back to that in a short while, just to expand on that a little. The draft regulations propose to prescribe the threshold amounts in which the 80-20 and 90-10 preference point system must be used together with the formula to be applied. Other matters necessary or expedient in order to achieve the objectives of the Act. Written comments on the draft regulations may be submitted by 11 April 2022, and they give the address and just ask for your permission to actually have your name submitted with the comments, and they may actually disclose that at some point in the time in the future. So why has National Treasury issued these regulations? Quickly to go back, this started off in November 2020 when the Supreme Court of Appeal decided that the minister acted outside his powers under Section 5.1 of the Framework Act in exercising the powers to make the 2017 regulations. And effectively, the Supreme Court of Appeal on the 2nd of November 2020 declared the Preferential Procurement Regulations 2017 to be inconsistent with the Policy Framework Act and are invalid. This declaration of invalidity, referred to in paragraph B above, is suspended for a period of 12 months from the date of this order. So 2nd of November, the Supreme Court of Appeal said the Preferential Procurement Regulations are invalid. They're inconsistent with the Framework Act. Gave the minister 12 months to get ready to fix the problem. That was then appealed. That was appealed to the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court came back and said on the 16th of February, at 10 o'clock on the 16th of February, that the appeal was dismissed. The appeal being to appeal the decision of the Supreme Court, which said that the 2017 regulations are invalid. It's important to understand the details of that appeal, or the details of the Constitutional Court's decision in this respect. And we'll come to that shortly. Since then, on the 25th of February, the National Treasury, the DG, and the Minister of Finance and the Department of Finance really said that freeze everything. We're not sure what's going on here. We didn't expect the Constitutional Court to make the decision that it made. We actually feel that the regulations will be valid until the 15th of March 2023, but we didn't expect this decision. And because there is this problem that we've got now, please stop everything. In an advisory note on the 3rd of March, they went a little bit further to say that you must, in terms of this decision, you must develop a preferential procurement policy. And then they started to give the details around the threshold amounts and the formula that must be prescribed by way of regulations, and said that what they will do is issue new draft regulations for comment in the week of the 7th of March on both the amounts and the formula. And I think we must say well done to Treasury for actually doing that. In the week of the 7th of March, on the 10th of March to be precise, they issued those draft regulations for comment. So they've kept with their goal for doing that. Now, when you look at the regulations, they are quite sparse relative to the 2017 regulations. The whole regulations around functionality have gone. The regulations around pre-qualification have gone. The regulations around local production and local content have gone. The regulation 11 around objective criteria has gone. The regulation 9 on subcontracting, if it is above 30 million rand, has gone. There's a whole range of things that are out of this regulation. And all it is really doing is stating the threshold amount for the acquisition of goods and services. And then interestingly, they are bringing into this the threshold amount for the disposal and lease of assets, as well as the formula. So there's a formula which they have to prescribe for the 80-20-90-10. They've given us the threshold. They've given us a minimum. They have given us the threshold for disposals and leasing, and they've given us the formula in which we can use that. They've also said there's a criteria for breaking deadlock, award of contracts to tenders not scoring the highest points, and there's remedies. And that's the upshot of the Preferential Procurement Regulations 2022. And if we look into the Act, you can see in the Act where it states very clearly that the prescribed amount for the 10 points and the 90-10 must be prescribed. The amount for the 20 points must be prescribed. The formula must be prescribed. The Act gives a very specific definition of what they mean by prescribed. It means by regulation. And so what National Treasury have done is try to close that gap that exists in the Framework Act, where the Act says that those three elements, the 10 points, the 20 points, and the formula, must be prescribed. And what they're trying to do is close that gap through these regulations that they've just issued. Some might ask, why is all the stuff missing? Why don't they bring in things that we think make sense to have, such as local production and local content? Why have they left out functionality? The reason for that is because the Constitutional Court has said very clearly that the Minister of Finance does not have the power to prescribe regulations. So the only thing the Minister of Finance can do at the moment through National Treasury, through the Office of the Chief Procurement Officer, is prescribe the value and the formula. That's all, nothing else. There may be, and I would not be surprised if there is, a legal case that is made to say they do not even have the power to do what they're doing now. That will be interesting to watch in the next while. So the question then becomes, I'm going to jump through that. What does this mean for you, given the recommendations from Treasury, given all the complexity and the issues that people are dealing with at the moment? These are the options that organs of state are dealing with. The first one is that they are trying to comply with the National Treasury Advisory of the 25th of February and the 3rd of March, which is basically freezing everything. Stop tenders, stop quotations, freeze everything. Some are doing that. The small ones are doing that. Some have said, this is not my problem. This is your problem, National Treasury. We're going to continue with the Preferential Procurement Regulation 2017. We're not going to change anything. We will continue with this. It's public knowledge that Eskom is one of those. The other option is you freeze what you can, but what you can't, you apply for a deviation. You apply to National Treasury or your provincial treasury to deviate from competitive bidding, so you can go directly to the supplier that you would like to do the work for and you ask them to give you a proposal and you contract with them. So you don't go out, you don't have any 2017 regulations, you just deviate. The other one, which is a point that came up from National Treasury on the 3rd of March, is that you request exemption. The scope of that exemption request is something we can discuss, but you basically request exemption from specific provisions in the Act. And the other option, and it's public knowledge, that eThekwini Metro in KZN have chosen this route. You say, look, Constitutional Court has pronounced, they've said that the minister has no power to create the regulations, that it is in our power as an organ of state to determine our own preference procurement policy, and therefore we're going to take all reference out of our policies to the 2017 regulations, and we're going to continue. We don't have to wait for anybody. These are the 5 options. Every one of these options has got merits. Every one of these options has got risks. What does the draft preferential procurement regulations mean for you right now? As far as these options are concerned, very little. They've issued the regulations in draft. They have said that the comments that are required are by the 11th of April 2022. I note your hand, Ron. The draft is out for discussion, and they want comments by the 11th of April. Once those comments come in, they will then have to respond and consider every one of those comments. Once that's done, they will then issue another draft. That draft will then be tabled through a whole range of structures in Parliament, from subcommittees to Parliament to the Cabinet, eventually to the President, who will enact the regulations and give an effective date to that. Last week, Friday, Treasury said they think that that could be 2 months away. They were saying at the time that they thought that they would only give people 2 weeks to comment. They've now made it a month. It's unlikely that these are going to be effective within the next 3 months.